The European Union has finally unlocked 6.6 billion euros intended for Ukraine's defense, but the release of this capital has triggered an immediate standoff between Germany and Poland over who actually controls the money. For over 2 years, this massive fund was trapped by a systematic veto from the administration of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. That blockade ended in June 2026, following a decisive political shift in Budapest and the rise of Peter Magyar's new government. With the veto, 0.6 billion euros are now back in a Brussels account under EU control. However, rather than flowing to the front lines, the funds have become a point of friction between Europe's largest allies. If you want to understand the complex financial mechanics driving global conflicts, make sure to subscribe to the Global Warwatch network for our premium geopolitical analysis. The removal of the Hungarian veto exposed a specific geopolitical rift in EU solidarity that had previously been obscured by the executive impasse in Budapest. The EU Defense Fund operates as a reimbursement loop. Member states donate weapons from their active military stockpiles to Ukraine, and in exchange, Brussels pays them back to cover the replacement costs. Member states submitted 13.5 billion euros in approved reimbursement claims, but the unlocked account holds exactly 6.6 billion. This creates a 6.9 billion euro gap, making full financial compensation for every donating state mathematically impossible. The nations most exposed to this deficit are the first responders, countries like Poland and Slovakia, who assumed massive security risks by stripping their active arsenals in the opening days of the war. Poland's early-stage transfers included 320 main battle tanks and a fleet of MiG-29 fighter jets. Warsaw is now demanding its full 450 million euro refund. Slovakia is likewise seeking hundreds of millions for transferring systems like their sole S-300 strategic air defense battery. These nations argue that reducing these payouts mid-game punishes the early donors, while starving the modernization of their own domestic armies. For Eastern Europe, this dispute centers on a perceived broken promise that forces the countries who took the greatest initial risks to subsidize the fund's shortfall. Germany is leading a different approach. Berlin proposes bypassing member state refunds entirely and sending the full 6.6 billion directly to Ukraine. Because Berlin is unilaterally spending 11.5 billion euros on Ukraine in 2026, German officials argue that returning a few hundred million to national budgets is an unnecessary diversion of frontline resources. This shows the compromise proposed by EU diplomacy, a plan to give member states a 10% pro rata refund, while diverting the remaining 90% to joint weapons procurement. France supports this compromise, but with a protectionist caveat. Paris insists that any joint weapons purchases must apply exclusively to defense equipment manufactured within Europe. This bi-European mandate clashes with Ukraine's tactical requirements to stop incoming airstrike, real autonomy, and direct aid over the initial financial commitments made to their Eastern allies. The financial deadlock is aggravating pre-existing historical and geopolitical tensions across the region. In Warsaw, the perceived economic unfairness has sharpened recent diplomatic friction, specifically the outrage over President Zelensky naming a special forces unit after the UPA, an organization responsible for mass violence against Poles during the Second World War. In Slovakia, the lack of EU compensation has had a direct material impact. Prime Minister Robert Fico has cited the unpaid reimbursements as a reason for halting all state weapons transfers to Ukraine. If the EU slashes the promised reimbursements now, it risks a long-term erosion of trust among its frontline states. Frontline nations may respond to future security crises by hoarding their own military stocks for self-preservation, choosing national defense over collective European agreements. Conversely, if the funds are returned to Polish and Slovak treasuries, Ukraine loses the capital it needs to procure the air defense systems required to survive today's strikes. Thank you for watching. If you found this breakdown valuable, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the Global Warwatch network across all platforms. Brussels is now balancing the preservation of member state trust against the immediate funding of Ukraine's air defense, with each choice carrying its own strategic cost.